no one is safe. The fear they can instill in a foe, it can penetrate the soul.
You know what I like? Weapon reloads. If there's one thing I can appreciate when playing a game, it's the quality of animations, especially when it comes to the FPS genre. I can get rather picky, especially when it comes to warp cycles. I've complained to my friends many times in the past when I don't like a walking animation to a point where they're probably sick of it. And to that, I say I'm sorry, but whenever a view model just uses the figure of 8 walking animation without any style or detail to it, I'm sorry, but I just find that incredibly lazy. Which doubles when I play in VR. I know this might sound sad, but whenever I play an FPS in VR, I tend to mimic walking cycles, as I just find sliding about and not really doing anything rather boring. Plus, it does help add that extra little detail of immersion into a video game, and doing this pairs brilliantly with reloading a weapon in the heat of battle, like a bolt-action rifle in the middle of the Second World War, in a game called Sniper Elite VR. Now, before we go any further, I should note I'm not really the biggest fan of the Sniper Elite series. In fact, I'd never heard of it until the first Zombie Army game came out, as it was originally titled Sniper Elite Zombie Army. However, after the release of the trilogy, they dropped the Sniper Elite title altogether. Since then, I've gone back and played some of the mainline series, but I've never really finished any of them. No real reason as to why, I just get a little bored. Don't get me wrong though, Sniper Elite does have some good premise to it. It's like playing Hitman, but it's set during the Second World War, and instead of knocking people out and taking their clothes, you have the option to either pick everyone off from a distance using a sniper rifle while using sound to your advantage, or you could blow up Hitler with a Panzer. It sounds like a recipe that would convert brilliantly into VR, doesn't it? Well, I personally think that to be true. However, this probably isn't the game to prove it. And again, don't get me wrong, I've rather enjoyed my time with Sniper Elite VR, but I'd be lying if I didn't say this felt like a watered down and somewhat rough addition to the series. It's not bad, I've certainly played worse, but something about it irks me slightly. The story follows an old man reminiscing of his days during the Second World War as a member of the Italian resistance. Your point of view splits between moments in battle and him at an old age watching his grandkids in the garden. The meat of the game itself is split up into chapters, and this can be selected from a book that's conveniently glued to the old man's hand. It's basically just a level select screen, which also gives you the option to alter your loadout, while also checking challenges and the leaderboards. The levels themselves are split into 2 types, one being a more linear structure getting you from point A to point B with some objectives thrown in the middle, while the other style sees you providing cover to other resistance fighters from a high vantage point. These defense missions, while a little repetitive, aren't really the majority of the game, as you'll only encounter them a couple of times throughout, but the more linear levels is where the game really starts to show this sign of being watered down. These levels normally follow a formula of you either need to kill someone, blow something up, reach a certain area or find some intel, with a couple of groups of enemies along the way. These are fine as you're given the option to either go in guns blazing or take a more quiet approach, using sound in the map to your advantage to mask shots or using silent weapons to avoid detection. Obviously, with this being a stealth game, the idea is to go for a quiet approach. However, for some reason in this game, it doesn't half like to fight you with that concept. Firstly, sound masking for some reason only seems to cover sniper rifles, and after getting curious, panzers. Firing a pistol, shotgun or automatic rifle just seems to alert everyone immediately regardless of the guard's position, and sometimes they can spot you instantly without realising. My guess is with this one is because the belts sometimes lose track of your position, that's what the enemy detects, which isn't ideal when there's a level with a challenge that requires you not to get spotted. Oh, and a word of advice, if you're going to take the stealth approach, do not try to melee someone in this game. It's inconsistent and frankly rather pathetic. I tried this whenever I was given the opportunity and was only able to successfully take someone down quietly once. Any other time I tried to do this, it ended up being the equivalent of slapping someone in the face. It feels so half-assed. It feels like someone realised towards the end of development that this is in fact a stealth game and should probably include the ability to perform a stealth takedown. However, no one on the development team knew how to implement it. And after noticing a lack of sound when hitting someone, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is true. When it comes to the controls in Sniper Elite VR, it's weird. For the most part they work as intended, but you might encounter a slight issue with grabbing the wrong part of a weapon because both holding and reloading is done via the same grip button, and handling explosives seems to be a bit of an inconsistent mess. But besides that, the main control scheme works as expected and can feel great. Sometimes. I don't know why, but for my entire playthrough, something felt off about my hands. From the moment I could see them to when I started any form of movement, my hands just kind of felt out of sync. Kind of like it was slower than my actual movement, and it's not a frame rate issue either, as the game runs fine, but it felt like whenever I focused on my hands and moved them up and down, they felt out of place. After a while I did kind of get used to it, but every now and then something would happen that would remind me that everything was out of place, and it made some things rather distracting. This is genuinely the strangest issue I've ever encountered in a VR game, because it's not broken to a point where it's unplayable, but it certainly throws me off. Also, there's this weird issue with two-handed weapons where if I aim to a certain angle and then let go of my second hand, the gun doesn't snap back into the angle where my main hand is facing. Instead, it sticks in place and you have to wiggle your hand around a bit until it's back to normal, and sometimes that doesn't even work. You have to unequip and then re-equip the weapon. Also, you can't hold a pistol with two hands in this game to increase stability, which is kind of a letdown. But even with some rather janky controls, the game itself is still a lot of fun. The game would probably last you around 7 to 8 hours if you didn't have to replay any levels to beat the game, which, spoiler alert, you're gonna have to replay some levels. Each level has 3 challenges to them. The first challenge is just to beat the level, the second is a challenge specific to that mission, and then the final challenge is just to rack up a specific amount of points. Normally I'd ignore these on my first playthrough as I just want to have fun and play the game my way, but it turns out that was the biggest mistake I could make. So the game does nothing to warn you about this being a thing, as levels towards the end of the game are actually locked off unless you beat so many challenges. So you'll be like me, just playing through the game like normal, turning to the next page, and you'll just see a big fuck you waiting for you. I hate when games do this. It clearly shows that the developers were worried about people completing the game too quickly, so instead of either delaying the game a bit to make it longer or introducing a post-game system, they decide to just punish everyone and lock away the ending. Which is incredibly stupid because, newsflash, a game being short isn't a bad thing. I don't need a game to last 400 hours, I just want it to be good. I've genuinely lost count how many games I've never finished out of spite of this, and I guess Sniper Elite VR might be joining this list because due to having to replay more levels and finish off extra challenges, the weather in the UK has gone up and is now unbearable to play VR. So I probably won't be playing any VR games for a month or so I will probably never come back to finish this because I'll forget about it. And I know that is not the developer's fault, that would be stupid to blame them for it, but locking off the end of a game for players is just such a stupid inconvenience. And yes, under certain situations, sure, I get it. If a game is structured to have short levels in mind, then this is a good way to help spread out the increase of content over time to not overwhelm the player. But Sniper Elite is not built this way, nor does it introduce anything throughout the game. All these levels are the same from start to finish, and they aren't even short. Some can even last roughly half an hour to finish, and it's not like I can just quickly go into a level and do a challenge, because I have to actually complete the level again. Who seriously thinks this is a good game idea? Imagine you get to the end of Half-Life Alyx only for G-Man to tell you, "I'm sorry, Miss Vance, you haven't killed all the head crabs in the hotel. Go back and do it again." It would be shit, wouldn't it? You go through all these levels thinking you're doing rather well just to be told to fuck off at the last minute because you're not good enough. If anything, you're just belittling the player doing this. Obviously though, this doesn't ruin the overall game, it would be silly if it did, but it certainly leaves a sour taste in the end of the game for me. Sniper Elite VR, while in somewhat of a rough state, is still rather fun. The gameplay itself is solid enough, but it is definitely held back by the weird hand movement issues and locking away the ending. I imagine over time with patches, the controls will be ironed out, and who knows, maybe they'll remove this stupid requirement. So if Rebellion keep up the good work, I imagine it will be ironed out in no time. So honestly, even with all that said, I would still recommend this game. And hey, it's still a lot cheaper than Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, which is still £45, what the fuck. And with that said and done, I'd just like to say thank you to Rebellion for giving me the opportunity to play Sniper Elite VR. It was definitely fun, for the most part. And while I have your attention, if you haven't already blacklisted me already, how about making a VR rendition of Zombie Army? Because I mean, they're pretty much the same structure, so you're halfway there already. And if you think about it, it's a no-brainer.